The Turnpike District issued bonds and built it anyway. So, Olga Blanco now has Project 1 of the Suncoast Toll Road in her backyard.
I lived in Tampa all my life, and we started our dairy business in 1949. In 1958, the airport had to take that property, so we started looking further north, and we figured that we wouldn't be bothered anymore for my lifetime. I wouldn't have to move again. But Suncoast Parkway was going to come right through our property. Now I find myself that I am behind a 6-foot-tall fence. I hate to see it, but I have to deal with it. Especially my house is full of memories, and we built it ourselves, and it might be dangerous for me to stay up front here. When we moved here, we had to drive 3 miles to Gunn and 54 to pick up our mail. I even read my own electric meter, and they would come and check me once a year or twice a year. When I used to do my dishes, I would look out my kitchen window that faces 54, and in 10 minutes that I would be doing dishes, maybe 1 or 2 cars would go by. There wouldn't be any problem with people coming in, trespassing, because we each took care of our place. Growth is, of course, coming in, and between the Suncoast to my west and 41 to the east, there is a figure of about 10,000 homes that are going to be built.
Building roads makes growth happen, but is growth, or at least more of this kind of growth, what Florida needs? Well-documented national studies consistently show that residential growth is a tax drain. Commercial land use brings in taxes, but it almost always generates more residential growth too. The real winner is actually open land, which saves big money just by not requiring expensive streets and services. The numbers are even more impressive in Florida. A 1996 Soil and Water Conservation District study for Lake County showed residential development cost $1.56 for every tax dollar generated, and farmland cost only 7 cents.
Stretching from Hillsborough County to northern Hernando, the Suncoast Parkway will provide a quick link from rural hamlets to downtown Tampa.
Fortune 500 companies aren't tempted to come here because of an easier commute to downtown Tampa. What they're looking for are places which have a high quality of life, including scenic beauty, convenient recreation opportunities, and good schools. Increasingly, that's not Florida today. The original development concept was quite different.
To build the industrial potential of our state upon the natural advantages of a healthful climate and pleasant living conditions with a skilled workman in our growing labor force.
It sounded great. All we really did, though, was build more houses and widen roads to make room for more people. Instead of skilled workers, we got lowly service jobs. And our pleasant living conditions, time after time, became ugly and inefficient suburban sprawl. To most people, this stretch of Florida's Gulf Coast qualifies as very pleasant living conditions. Often called the Nature Coast, it's the wildest coastline left in Florida, and one of the longest natural coastlines left in all America. The study area for Project 2 of the Suncoast Parkway is right in the middle of the Nature Coast. The state has already spent millions of tax dollars here purchasing conservation lands to connect federally protected national wildlife refuges on the coast with state-protected forest to the east. Any route through this corridor would upset years of conservation planning and ruin projects taxpayers have already paid big money for. Half of all the bird species of the United States can be found in Florida. We have some of the most unique plants and animals in the world. 8% of them found nowhere else. Some of Florida's unique plants and animals need to live in special places. That's part of what makes them unique, and that's what makes them so valuable as barometers for what's happening to Florida's overall environment. The Florida scrub jay, named for its special habitat, has declined to 10% of its original numbers because of habitat loss. The red-cockaded woodpecker is on the federal list of endangered species because it requires old trees for nesting. These trees have been almost eliminated by early harvest lumbering and by accelerated commercial and residential growth. The woodpeckers nest in hollow cavities which take a couple of years to make. Even then, they can only use longleaf or slash pine trees old enough to have developed a fungus that softens the wood at the center of the trees. If we want to keep our threatened and endangered species, we need to protect the places they need to live. Places like the Lecanto Sandhills and the Withlacoochee State Forest. Under natural conditions, these places were shaped and maintained by fire. Florida gets more lightning strikes than almost any other part of the country. So plants like the saw palmetto evolved underground stems and rapidly growing leaves as adaptations to regularly occurring fires. Other plants, like longleaf pines, actually require burning in order for their seeds to germinate. Controlled fire is the most important tool land managers have to maintain or recreate natural systems. As land manager Kevin Love, who works for the Southwest Florida Water Management District, explains.
We have basically gotten in the way of the natural processes that have shaped Florida, the landscape of Florida, the habitats of Florida. The more that we box our natural areas in with roads, especially roads, limited access toll roads like the Suncoast Parkway, the more it restricts land managers' ability to apply fire to those natural areas, which is essential. On conservation lands especially, we need to somehow try to mimic or replace those natural processes that can no longer work as they did. Any burning done to the west of the Suncoast Parkway alignment is going to blow smoke across the road, and you cannot do that. What land managers are forced to do then is to limit the number of days per year that they do burning. It's more costly to do burning. The ultimate result of that is going to be just a diminishment of the quality and the function of our conservation lands.
Highways like the Suncoast and the growth they bring with them are also real physical barriers that eliminate or greatly reduce movement of species across habitat corridors. What's at stake here are not just a few large or endangered plants and animals, but whole natural communities, which also need smaller, less noticeable plants and animals in order to function. To save a species, we need to save its community. To save a community, we need to save a piece of the landscape of which it is a part. Connected habitat corridors are the last chance we have of saving Florida's hard-pressed natural systems. University of Kentucky wildlife biologist Josh Brown recently completed the last year of a 5-year study of the region's black bears.
The ideal way to preserve this type of habitat would be to connect it to some other bear population in Florida. Problem with that is probably the closest bear habitat is Ocala National Forest, which is probably anywhere from 90 to 100 miles away. So we have to move across several different types of landscapes, and that's where roads come into play. That's where habitat fragmentation comes into play. Because the real key for the longevity for the Chassahowitzka bear is land acquisition. 2001 was actually the highest year on record for road kills for bears in the state of Florida. You're losing almost 10% of your bears a year simply to roadkill. And the bear has to move across all of these different habitats